Well, today's seminar starts with a false dichotomy between people who think, or the ideas that we may be evolved to be good, and then another set of ideas and other people behind them that we have essentially evolved to be bad in a moral sense. And although they do have a germ of truth, there is a sense in which we have predispositions that lead us in various directions. Some of them we denigrate, and some of them we find praiseworthy. I think the central adaptation, evolutionary adaptation with regard to our morality as humans is reflected in our species name, sapiens. We're thinking humans, we're struggling humans, clever, hopefully at the end of it. And so it is that capacity to weigh the different influences and options that we have that is the central adaptation in morality. And I developed from that a view of why we have moral tension, why we have these contrary influences in our nature from a natural history or evolutionary perspective. Right. I think that the reason why we are fascinated as a culture with nature versus nurture, or genes versus environment, or innate factors versus learned, is precisely because we have this tension within us, both within the culture and within individual minds, that suggest contrary influences. And where we lie on this continuum of believing that we are governed by our history versus governed by, well, history in two different senses, whether we are governed by our evolutionary history and thus our genes, or from our personal history and thus our experiences, is politically and often religiously and definitely personally important to us and very relevant. But I still think that it is a falsely compelling argument, not only because many of our conflicts come from within the learned area or within our genetic influences, but also because we really need to look at human behavior and psychology in the context of genes, environment, and development, all wrapped up in one interacting process. Yes, I think that the religious understanding of morality, or even broader, the cultural understanding of morality, does not necessarily make reference to any of the causative factors that I'm going to bring up, or that I bring up in my seminar. And it's the evolutionary background for morality and a religious, for instance, understanding of it don't necessarily interact with each other, but they are not conflictual with each other either. It is similar to levels of explanation within biology. So, for instance, we might have a physiologist who explains why someone might jump off a cliff in terms solely of hormonal and neuronal connections within the body. And then someone else might explain it functionally. Well, there was an animal running after them, and they jumped off the cliff because it was a lot safer to jump into the water than get eaten by the animal. And then we also might have an intentional state as well, where we explain the action based on what the individual thought at the time. And I would say that morality in every human institution or capacity is a lot like that. We can talk about it from a natural history perspective, talk about the function of it biologically, talk about how it may have arisen in a way that an anthropologist or a psychologist might discuss it. And then you could also talk about its deeper significance to humans, and that of course includes religious explanations and revelation, if that is relevant to someone, and also cultural inputs and the role of it in society.